and welcome to a special interview by Skills Rediscovery. Skills Rediscovery is Asia's fastest growing multilingual skills education platform for sharing and acquiring skills with a wide range of courses from digital marketing and machine learning to public speaking, soft skills, and languages like German to even guitar and Bharatanatyam. The National Education Policy 2020 talks about integrating skills education with regular academics, and Skills Rediscovery does this through live courses in a language of your choice. So this is an online platform where we connect you with the right kind of people to help you develop skills for the 21st century market. Today, we have Dr. Dilip Nand Keolia. He is the Co-Chancellor at Commonwealth University in Pune. He has varied hands-on bottom-up professional experience of over 40 years that includes consulting, research, training, and teaching. His exposure has been in both domestic and international environments. Dr. Dilip, he also has interests in the area of entrepreneurship and SMEs development, business strategy, marketing, retailing, service marketing, and branding. Dr. Dilip, it's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me here.
Let me start by asking you about your professional journey. How did it all begin? Did you always know from your school days that you will be doing this?
Well, I mean, what one plans in the school, it's an old saying that man proposes, God disposes. So I don't know whether I planned this, but yeah, whatever I have done so far, I have really liked it, and I'm enjoying myself, and it gives me great pleasure to be of help to particularly the student community in the postgrad levels. And besides generally teaching, I like to be a part of their journey, and that is what gives me the greatest high.
Could you share how your journey started, like right after college days? How did you get into this field? And you also have mentioned about your international experience. So we would like to know more about that as well.
So after my graduation, I realized that I needed to first get some exposure before I went into management education. So I started my career in a tire company called CIET Tires, which at that point in time was an Italian organization with some partnership with Tata. It was a great learning experience for that 7 years there. And then I was picked up by another tire company, which was a government, semi-government organization called Vikrant Tires. So again, that was a great learning journey, because not only did I compress the highs in my career by almost 7 to 8 years, but that gave me the challenge to be very, very involved. From there, I joined a battery company, and from there I was picked up by Pirelli Tires, and so I worked abroad managing sales and marketing in a few countries, particularly in Gulf. Now, sometime during this, I did my MBA, and I could gather some more expertise from Asian Institute of Management in Manila. So all that put together has been a great journey, and for last 16 years, I have been in academics. So, and it gives me the greatest high. No amount of money really can compensate when a student writes to you, so what you taught me is working for me.
Perfectly, exactly.
That education doesn't pay much in India. I mean, if you want to take it up, as a career, it doesn't pay much. But this particular high is worth more than whatever corporate could give me at that particular point of time. Not to say that the corporate exposure is not good, but this has a long-term effect. And when you see some of your students being written about in newspapers, it makes you feel so proud and so nice. And well, I am now, as you can see from my beard, I'm quite old, and but the ambition lives on. So how can I translate that ambition? I can't probably do that same level of work that's required in the corporate, but I can help shape students to do, and they vicariously they contribute to my ambitions, and that is primary reason why I'm in education.
Yeah, absolutely. Because with your age and experience, actually wisdom comes in, and this is what is required. And so, tell us about your wins and struggles throughout your career.
So the wins, one doesn't. Right throughout my career, I have been A-class performer, particularly in the corporate. In the academics, I've been relatively good, being rated while I was I'm teaching in Victoria University. I have been rated very high, a score of 4.9 out of 5. Was getting 5 out of 5 would be a dream that will never come true. So I think I'm very happy with that. As I told you before, my other win is some of my students, almost about 2,000 odd students, keep in touch thanks to this WhatsApp, and they write to me occasionally, and it gives me a great high. My LinkedIn is full of their success stories. That gives me a great high. So that's the win part. The struggle part is, I don't think systems should be introduced in education, and that becomes a struggle, particularly when you are trying to systematize it through IT. Education must flow from the heart, not from just the mind alone. And IT is just the mind part and nothing else. So the true education, I don't think can be strictly relied upon through IT. And there are always glitches. And last 2 years has taught us, and that has been my biggest struggle in the entire professional career that I've had. In terms of corporate careers, yeah, of course. I started work in a metropolis, and then I was transferred to a small town. So acclimatization did take a little bit of time, but once acclimatized, I thought I loved the environment of smaller towns much better. So that's what I can say about it. I'm not, honestly speaking, I don't think I've struggled at all in my life. God has been kind to me.
Great. But what the thing that you said about, doing an online education and even the condition in India where so many students lack the kind of resources which are required, it really must have been a challenge for all the teaching community in our country. Well, Dr. Dilip, moving ahead, tell us about your university. How did the idea of putting it together come to you and your colleagues, and what special courses are being offered over there which are separate from other universities?
So the Commonwealth University is a university based out of UK. Okay, and I am a co-chancellor there. Now that university is slightly different in the sense that it caters only to business leaders, political leaders, and people like that. So each time there is a requirement, and we plan out courses, particularly in strategy and entrepreneurship, and exploring how politics would or society influences business. So we put those things together, and then those courses are offered. We also have only research-oriented programs which can result into a PhD, and of course what is known as doctorate honorary causa. So it's that kind of a university. It's not university as we understand. In the meantime, I am also involved with the Universal Business School, which is not too far from where you are.
Rajat, right?
Yeah. So and they are offering a number of courses into business management. Okay, and I am heading their marketing department, as well as I am looking at applied research with the industry. So that's the kind of, now in management, as far as UBS is concerned, they are offering courses in marketing, they are offering courses in HR, finance, and operations. And they have some very, very good links. For instance, Cardiff is one of them, Lincoln, and so many others, apart from our own courses. So there is an opportunity for students to get a dual degree with dual specialization, etc. I have been with UBS for a little over a month and a half, and the work atmosphere and the speed at which we work is breathtaking, but extremely satisfying.
So
that's
That's really very interesting. The concept of the Commonwealth University is quite interesting, and maybe it's very unheard of in our common knowledge.
Yes, that's true.
So, what do you think about the situation or position of skills education in the overall education scenario in our country?
You see, I think skill education is extremely necessary. But one more thing that is more necessary than this is, attitudinal correction. Okay, there has to be something. I've yet not been able to find that. But if you see yourself much bigger than what you really can deliver, and therefore there is an attitude, it's I don't think that will work. And it gets discovered, and that's why we have so much attrition in the corporate world and so on. Okay, there are imbalances in the expectation of packages, you can say that these schools and engineering colleges promise whatever, but if people were to read between the lines, they really talk about the highest package got, and they really talk about the average package that is there. Okay. So average means there could be quite a lot below, because the highest package is so high. So that reality is not seen, and that is, I don't know whether that is good marketing, but that's how it is. Now, as far as the skill is concerned, and NEP 2020 has very boldly gone and said that we should do it, and we should begin that right from the school. I think this is a good move. I think that's what it should be, because employability is an issue. Now, the only argument I have with NEP is this: the student is free to choose whatever he wants to choose. Really, actually makes the whole thing very vague. World Economic Forum says that there is, that the Industry 4.0 would travel or traverse through 2030 in a way that 40% of the jobs will be lost. Okay, they won't be there. They won't exist. Which means we need to be specialized, we need to become professionals. And it also means the other trend which is bucking up all over the world, and India is probably the second largest in that trend, is this gig working. It's going to be a gig economy, and to be a gig worker, there are two things which I feel is very essential. One is a streak of entrepreneurship, and therefore I think overall an entrepreneurial skill is what is the need of the hour. And two is becoming extremely specialized to be able to hunt all over the globe in whichever profession the student chooses. And that is where NEP, to my mind, I mean, I may be wrong, but to my mind, it appears that kind of freedom that I can do a part in history and a part in engineering and a part and I collect credits may have implications which are not going to be very, very, as planned, if I may put it. So having interest in those might be a good idea, which is currently being done by formation of clubs, etc. And those interests can be pursued through that. But as a curriculum, I don't know whether that is. Yeah, of course. I mean, let's say somebody is taking marketing, then things like neuromarketing coming in or digital marketing coming in. So a skill development of that type might make a difference to a person who's chosen marketing. But if he were to go and study, let's say, Sanskrit or whatever, that won't really help him get where he needs to go. So a skill development, like you just introduced in the very beginning, there's a huge variety of skill development that you all do. Well, all those can be included, but they should be included as a part of clubs in institutes, and those certifications could help build the resume. But as a part of curriculum, I have my reservations.
Yeah, actually, pretty valid concerns you have raised here. What do you think could be the role of the industry in ensuring that this kind of education is delivered in colleges?
So the industry, there is a huge divide between industry and the academia. Both have their valid points, but mostly a level of indignation towards each other, where we feel that the academics are just theoreticians and the corporates believe that's what the corporates believe, and we believe the corporates are not in line
bothered.
Or whatever.
Yeah, they're just not bothered. So you have in both the worlds.
Correct. So having straddled both the worlds, I do feel that there is a fissure in between, and we need to bring that together very quickly. And this can be done, as you know, that education doesn't get that kind of funds. Okay, and therefore it will have to be the corporate that has to take the first proactive step of sponsoring research relevant to them, relevant to their industries, and there will come discovery of variety of skills that might be required going forward. Now, each professional institute can then look at building those courses into their curriculum. Now, that is the way forward, according to me, where now, I mean, it's very easy for corporate to say that only 20% of the people are employable. Okay, so fine, they can curse the education system here and things like that, and therefore we get into skill development. But it is also necessary for them to come and say, what is the skill that we can impart to the students? So that should be actually, I mean, the government should make it a part of a CSR activity, if you might say. It doesn't require much funds from them, but what it requires is collaborations. I don't think there is any institute in this country, any professional institute, which doesn't want to connect.
Exactly.
We want to connect with them, and we have been approaching them because ultimately the end product goes to them.
Correct.
And for us, commercially, it will be only valid if we are able to produce what they need.
Correct.
So that's where the problem is.
So, having said all this, have you also come across some good examples where the industry have actually gone down to the level of academia and tried to, make some positive changes? Like we keep hearing about stuff being done by Tatas and many other groups, but what has your experience been with this?
So far, all my experiences is that we can get a few speakers and they come and give some gyan, okay, about how it is in the corporate. But I have not seen many institutes coming up. Yeah, of course, Tatas and Birlas are there in education, but they leave it at that. Here, what I'm talking about is, sorry, I've got a bad throat, so please pardon me. Here, what I'm talking about is a more proactive action, where they should be. What is also happening in India, at least, that if there is a project to be given, you would, not that I will blame them, but you would only give it to the top maybe 5%. Okay. And you want to get people from all over the country. How does that work? If you're giving projects, if you're giving consultancy assignments only to the top, discounting the next 95%, then you are not helping the cause of education, because there is great benefit in experiential learning, and we are in UBS. We are having a program where we immerse students into research like this, and we are trying our level best to get to corporate to hand us over some of these. We have the same capabilities. In fact, let's put it like this, that for every one seat in IIM Ahmedabad, there are 42,000 clinics.
Yeah.
So it is seen so well that the one who makes it, he doesn't need to be taught. You show him a book and it works. The challenge is with us, and the industry isn't doing much to help us. UBS has been endorsed by 60 of the top chief executives, but in terms of getting research projects, getting consulting assignments, in the last 1.5 months, I haven't seen much happening. Okay. Just let me complete. There could be 1 or 2 MDPs, but that is probably to tick the box that they have conducted.
Just as a formality kind of a thing.
So that doesn't help.
But do you think that the COVID situation has really, impacted we have seen a lot of automobile sector actually wind up its operations from India because the middle class is shrinking, the purchasing capacity is not there. So all the industry has already taken a big hit. And in this scenario, how do they collab with colleges? So do you think that somewhere is also a factor, especially in the last 2 years?
My view, of course, I'm picking it up from somewhere. If you're scared that you train people and they will leave you, that's a lesser risk than when you have untrained people. So while some foreign companies are leaving our shores, sad to know that, but it may not really be the business condition due to COVID. There will be 10,000. While you have talked about some automobile companies, let's talk about a power generation company and a telecom company who have been, charged taxes and fines in retrospective. That makes the world uncertain, and that has what probably has impacted, because these companies may also feel that if they stuck around, because all these companies who have left us aren't strapped for funds. And when they are not strapped for funds, then they have their own terms of how they work. And so if we are not going to be able to provide that kind of an fertile ground to them, then we will lose. I mean, so much was the call about come make in India and all that. What happened? How many have come? One or two, and we tom-tommed about it, and then everything petered out. So the issue here again is not really education, not really the COVID situation. It is also getting the right kind of business environment. So ease of doing business, we claim that we are the highest, but ground realities talk differently. And one of the difficulties in ease of doing business is getting the right kind of manpower, which is what education at the moment should all be about. So let us wait and see what how the rules of the game are framed. The policy has been declared, the policy has been adopted, but how it pans out will determine the future and will probably determine the return of these very same companies who have left us.
Let's hope for the best.
Yes.
Moving towards the end, would you like to address our students, because you have worked with students for quite a long time? Is there any particular piece of advice that you would like to share with them on how they can condition their minds, to fit in this 21st century market?
So my advice to them is we can't be good at everything. And therefore, everything that is attractive and that shines isn't always gold. The way to look at it is sit down with yourself in front of a mirror, and go into a flashback for the last 5 years and check what are the things that made you feel happy. And then shortlist them and then find which is the one which created eudaimonia. That is extreme happiness. That is your calling. If you follow that path, there is no question of you not succeeding. My other take is while in a boom period, to use the word gade gode, they become the same. So there is a huge requirement and you are picked up at any price. It is during the slumps that the real value comes. And even if it's a sinking industry, there will always be place for a good person, for an excellent person, and that will come by you following your passion. I give examples to many of my students. If you have ever traveled in Bombay local, people are packed like sardines, and there is this person standing in the corner solving crossword puzzle from either Midday or some newspaper, and suddenly somebody steps on his toes. He gets hurt, he shouts for a minute, but then he's too involved with his crossword to bother about much further. Gets out of the train, takes a cab, goes to his office. Every coffee break, he's busy with that crossword puzzle, and he relishes the one word that he is finding it difficult to resolve. Once you can reach that level of passion, success has no other way but to, bow in front of you, kneel down in front of you, or come under your feet. So the mantra is follow your passion very passionately.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Dilip. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Rishabh.